Sometimes big companies do very bad things in a big way. And by this, I mean replace products that cost a lot of money when they originally came out. And then in a few years, they decide to discontinue all support and the product in general, which means all upgrades, all updates, and all connectivity options that once made you attracted to the product in the first place. And in this respect, I am talking about the iPod Classic, the 120 gigabyte iPod Classic. That it was a small hard drive surrounded by a white encasing, and then they had a variation of silver and black, which was a beautiful design. It had weight to it because it was well made. It was stable, it was steady, and not only that, but the battery life on it is unmatched by any electronic music listening device that there is in the market now, including your iPhone or your Android device. So after they stranded their customers, Apple company did, they decided to then move on to the iPod Touch, which of course was good in that it had a lot of other things that they had in mind. Like it had a calendar, it had games, it had messages, it had heart rate, and all these things that people who just wanted to listen to music just was not interested in. They were not interested in all those things. They were just wanted something to listen to their music that was not attached to a computer and was portable. Something else about the iPod Touch, why people didn't gravitate to it after the iPod Classic, was because the battery life, just like on your iPhone, after some time, yes, when it's new, the battery will sustain a large amount of charge, but then over time, you just have it unplugged from the outlet for a few minutes and then the battery will drain. That's something that technology has not caught up to yet. But iPod Classic, perhaps the best portable music listening device that there was, had that mastered. But with the latest updates that were made on the Mac machines, you can no longer sync. So people would keep two computers, one to charge and transfer music from iTunes, right? Because Apple did away with iTunes. Then they had to find a way to transfer music. So there's an easy way to transfer music off of the iPod, but not any way to sync music, even purchase music back onto the iPod, which is in a way, it's a form of theft in a way, because you put all this money into it and now you can't access the things that you bought. Will your purchases still be there with Apple Music? Yeah, you can access it, but try to download it on the computer and then put it on the device. It's not really possible. And by possible, there are ways, there's third-party software. There's third-party software that can enable you to transfer that music from the computer to your iPod, but you can't make playlists. The beauty of having such a device that holds a lot of storage, has a lot of memory, is that you can separate and organize your songs and all your files in categories by playlist, 80s, 90s, whatever you want. So this left the consumer out in the cold. Sony has a device that is like the iPod, but it costs about $300 for one that doesn't have Bluetooth, and then they have another one that's $700, and they have another one that's $1,200. A lot of DJs would use the iPod because it held a lot of the songs that they were playing once DJing became more digital. So all this to say that this left the consumer out in the cold to try to find a replacement. And by replacement means that once all these smaller companies flooded the market, because the iPod Classic is now unusable. I mean, you can still hear the music that you had saved on it, but you just can't add anything new. You have companies like this, right? And a few other companies that have big storage, but just not a lot of history when it comes to the market. And a lot of these companies don't offer long-time product support, so they might give you, hey, let's say we have 64 gigabytes of storage, but then you have to figure out, well, if the product doesn't last very long, then I downloaded all this music and I've added all this music onto this device, and now I can't use it. So what you want to do, what a lot of people started doing is going for products that took a micro SD card and putting a lot of music on there, and then if the device goes bad, then taking the micro SD card out and putting it on another device. The bad thing is if the SD card goes bad, well, many micro SD cards don't offer data recovery, and many consumers don't want to go through the process of recovering data, especially if it means sending it out someplace and making a shipping label and then waiting for it to be returned. And the other thing is that you didn't have this hassle with the iPod Classic. So if you're into the nostalgia of the iPod Classic, here you have a device. I'm going to read straight from the specification. It is a knockoff of the iPod Classic. And it says Model Y1. The company is called Inioasis. That's Innioasis. The weight is 23 ounces, so it's already a lot lighter than the iPod Classic. The storage is 128 gigs, and the battery capacity is 1250 mAh, which is about 25 to 35 hours of music, depending on how long you listen to music continuously. And the screen size is 2.4 inches. Music formats: MP3, WAV, FLAC, APE, OGG, M4A, AAC, WMA, MP2, AMR, MIDI, M43, MMF, WV, AIF, AIFF, AU, RA, MKA, AC3, and CA4. And like the later versions of the iPod Classic, this has personalized color varieties, and I will show you. So the color of the box is going to mimic the color of the iPod knockoff by Inioasis. And here it is. And what I like about products that are not Apple is that you can just plug it into the USB device, at least in theory. We still have to test it out, perhaps in another video, and be able to add music that way instead of having to sync, instead of having to erase, instead of having to purchase. You can just drag music onto the music device. And here it is. It's yellow. I like brighter colors because it's easier to find. I'm not too fond of the pink, but I do like reds. I'm not too fond of the greens, but I do like purple, silver, as well as black. So what you might want to do immediately for something like this is get a case, because it's not as sturdy as the iPod Classic. Here's the screen size of my hand. And a lot of people get it for MP4. I've never been one of those people. I don't prefer to watch any kind of movie or video on a screen this size. It's a personal preference. But here you see the buttons. They're the same as the iPod Classic, right? Pause, play, rewind, forward, and then to loop a single song or to loop the whole album, and you press on the, I think on the iPod Classic, you just held the power button to power it on and power it off. Here is another thing that you might find interesting. It has an audio jack for an auxiliary cable or an audio jack, 3.5 millimeter. And it also, unlike the iPod Classic, it has a USB-C input to transfer music as well as to charge the device. I wouldn't necessarily, I don't know if this plays from the speaker. It does have holes down here that could be for sound. And I see people in their ratings and their reviews, they're talking about how the sound is not as powerful as they would think, but I don't think anybody buys this device just to hear music from it. I think this is something that you would use to connect to your speakers, because unlike the iPod Classic, these have the capability of being connected to Bluetooth. And also with the audio jack, you can see that you can connect it to external speakers that are wired or wired headphones. The wired Apple headphones are pretty good. That's probably one of the best earbuds that you're going to find on the market, the one with the microphone on it, not the one with the rubber tips that slip off your ears when you're exercising or you're sweating, but just the basic ones that used to come with Apple devices before they stopped coming with the things you need, the accessories you need to work your product. And in the back, made in China, the Inioasis company. It also comes in orange, but that one never seems to be in stock. It comes in black, and that one you can get sooner than later, because I believe that's the one that they sell most. And they have white and they have silver. So they try to pattern their designs after the Apple iPod Classic. And this is what else is in the box. There's the USB-C cable to USB-A. And here are those headphones that I kept mentioning, keep slipping off, and of course you have to sell many tips. And maybe they're more sanitary because you can replace the tips, but I'm not a big fan of these headphones. And even though they're taking over the market on the lower end, I'm just not a big fan of it. Even Bose has these types of headphones for their quiet comfort, not quiet comfort, but sound something. Forget the model. But it's just a bad design. Just not partial to them. And inside you have instructions. And yes, the bottom is a speaker. 3.55 audio output. It has a reset button, just like you do in some laptops, right here in the middle. I guess if you have any technical difficulties, just go ahead and click it. I just don't know if it'll reset the data as well. Just thinking ahead as far as troubleshooting. It's my IT background. And it tells you how to transfer music. It says connect the white one player to your computer with the included USB-C cable. And short press OK to confirm and to turn on the USB storage. Click this PC on your computer's desktop. You will find a USB drive added to your list of devices and drives. That already sounds good to me. Having owned the iPod Touch, the original, and then also having the iPad 2, and of course, with their wires, if it's not synced up to the latest version of iTunes, it was a disaster to try to sync music, and maybe that's part of the reason why they did away with it. But it's also, right, there's not many things in the market that's tangible, and even though an MP3 is not tangible because it's still digital, and there's no device like a CD player that you can hear your tunes on, at least you can depend on hearing your music even if the internet is not available once this is loaded. So this is the Inioasis music player. I'm going to call it the MP3 player because that's what I'm going to use it for, even though it has other capabilities of other audio storage formats. So here it is. Maybe I'll do a review later as to how it actually works and connects for those of you who are interested. But of course, when you get a product like this, you want to make sure that it has positive reviews and reviews that are not bought by the company or by some promotion, right? So a lot of companies have hundreds of reviews, but you see that most of them are bought or they ran some promotion. Oh, if you like it, we're going to give you a free donut or something like that. But yeah, pretty basic. And the price on something like this is less than $40, depending on when you get it. That's another selling point because iPod Classic, right? It almost like they charged, when it first came out, it was about $500. And then it started lowering its prices. But even you'll find some new and used versions for about $120, but you can't beat the price on this. And it's priced so if it doesn't work out, you might want to replace it. The only downside I would want to bring up some concern about is that it doesn't have an external memory storage where you can just buy a micro SD card and install it. But if that's a deal breaker, there's some others in the market that might do you better. If you are concerned that the product might fail at some point, I would also recommend a case again. But if you have an old iPod Classic, you might just want to take that one out and put this one in just to avoid scratches and the screen from breaking. So there it is, the Inioasis MP3 player in the yellow variety.